My stomach clenched like a fist as I stared at my phone screen, reading the email from my sister-in-law Victoria for the third time. The tasteless protein shake I'd been drinking suddenly felt like acid in my throat. "Hey, this year Christmas dinner will be a bit tight. Hope you understand. Let's meet some other time." No call, no apology. Just 12 words dismissing me from the family gathering as if I were some distant acquaintance they'd run out of chairs for. Outside my apartment window, holiday lights blinked mockingly across the street while notifications from our family group chat kept lighting up my screen. Discussions about the menu, arrival times, gift exchanges, the group they'd deliberately excluded me from, thinking I wouldn't notice. A text from my cousin Oliver popped up in a separate thread. "Dude, you won't believe it. We're pitching to North Star Logistics tomorrow. If we close this deal, we're talking 7 figures minimum. Pete's been working on this for months." Pete, my younger brother. The same one who'd told our aunt at Thanksgiving that I was still figuring things out with that particular mix of pity and superiority in his voice. The same brother who needed this logistics deal more than oxygen right now. What none of them knew was that 3 days ago, I had signed the final papers making me the majority owner of North Star Logistics. The acquisition document sat in my desk drawer, the ink barely dry. My name is Natalie. I'm 34 and a silent investor. This is the story of how I built an empire from the shadows they cast me into. Growing up in the Quinn family business meant one thing. You were either a shark or you were chum. My father had built Quinn Enterprises from nothing, turning it into a regional supply chain player through sheer force of will and ruthless negotiation tactics. Pete had inherited Dad's confidence, his charisma, and unfortunately, his arrogance. I'd inherited Mom's analytical mind, her caution, and her preference for working behind the scenes. "Natalie's too quiet for this business," my father would say, not realizing or caring that I could hear him. "Pete's got the personality for it. People want to do business with someone they connect with." So Pete became the heir apparent. He got the corner office when Dad semi-retired, the company car, the expense account. I got the data analysis department in the basement, tasked with generating reports that Pete would present as his own work. For years, I'd watched as Pete took credit for my market projections, my efficiency improvements, my vendor relationship strategies. I'd stayed silent, convinced that results would eventually speak for themselves. But they never did, not loudly enough to overcome Pete's practiced charm and our father's predetermined succession plan. Last year was the first Christmas I'd been excluded. "Just immediate family this year," Pete had explained, despite inviting our cousins Oliver and Liam, who worked at the company. I'd spent the holiday alone, scrolling through their Instagram posts of prime rib and expensive whiskey while eating takeout Thai food. That night, something had hardened inside me. I'd made a decision. If I wasn't valued as family, I would make myself invaluable as competition. I had savings. 10 years of living below my means, while Pete leveraged himself to the hilt with a McMansion and a boat he rarely used. I had connections, vendors and clients who respected the quiet woman who always remembered their children's names and anniversary dates. And most importantly, I had information. Years of identifying weaknesses in our industry that no one else had bothered to notice. Within 2 months, I'd founded Horizon Capital, a private investment firm with a single silent partner. Me. Within 6 months, I'd acquired 3 small logistics companies that Quinn Enterprises had overlooked. And within a year, I'd positioned myself to purchase North Star, the exact company Pete had been pursuing for nearly a year. Now, staring at Victoria's dismissive email, I felt a cold clarity settle over me. I closed my protein shake, set down my phone, and pulled out my laptop. Time to prepare for tomorrow's meeting. A meeting where Pete would be pitching to a company I already owned. I arranged for my college roommate Jack to represent me at the meeting. Jack had the kind of presence that commanded attention. Tall, confident, with just enough gray at his temples to suggest wisdom beyond his years. He owed me for fronting his law school tuition when his scholarship fell through. We'd remained close over the years, meeting monthly for coffee to discuss business opportunities, which is how he knew about my acquisition plans. "Just follow the script," I told him during our prep call. "Let them think they're closing until the very end." "And you'll be watching?" Jack asked. "Every second," I confirmed, setting up the hidden Zoom link that would allow me to witness everything without being seen. As Jack's official business partner in several ventures, I had legitimate access to all his meeting credentials. The next morning, I sat in my apartment, dressed in a suit despite no one seeing me, and watched as Pete, Oliver, and their business development guy Troy entered the North Star conference room. Pete wore his signature power move, a navy blazer that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Oliver had his lucky tie, the one with tiny sailboats that our grandmother had given him before she passed. Troy, who'd once told me at the company Christmas party that analytics girls should stick to spreadsheets and leave the talking to people with charisma, looked nervous, adjusting his cuffs repeatedly. Jack played it perfectly, professional, engaged, asking just the right questions to make them think the deal was practically closed. I watched my brother lean forward, that familiar confident smile spreading across his face as he delivered his rehearsed line. We believe this partnership will be a win-win. We've already made projections assuming your distribution network is on board. That was my cue. I texted Jack, now. Jack smiled and leaned back in his chair. Interesting, because the person who actually owns this network hasn't given approval yet. The confusion on Pete's face was immediate. Wait, I thought you were the founder. Nope, Jack replied with practiced ease. I just represent her. She built it, she funded it, she signs every deal. The silence that followed was delicious. I turned up the volume on my laptop to catch every syllable of their confusion. Jack slid a folder across the table. Inside was the acquisition document with my name highlighted at the bottom as the principal owner. Oliver blinked rapidly. Wait, what is this? Some kind of joke? She got your Christmas message, by the way, Jack added, his tone casual but cutting. The one where you didn't have space for her at dinner. Guess she had to make space somewhere else. The color drained from Pete's face as realization dawned. I could almost see the calculations running behind his eyes. How long I'd been planning this, what else I might know, what this meant for Quinn Enterprises, which I knew from my access to their financial records was barely staying afloat despite Pete's bravado. I still had my company login credentials since no one had thought to revoke them when I quietly started my own venture 6 months ago. You're still welcome to pitch, Jack continued, but just so you know, she's not looking for partners anymore. She's looking to acquire. Troy's mouth literally hung open. Oliver gripped the edge of the table, and Pete just stared at the document, at my name, as if willing it to change. I felt nothing at first, watching them squirm. Then, gradually, a sensation spread through my chest. Not quite satisfaction, not quite vindication, but something more complex. Power, perhaps, or justice. After the meeting, I waited 24 hours before making contact. No need to rush when you hold all the cards. I sent a single-line email to Pete, Oliver, and Troy. Let's meet December 25th, my place. No greeting, no explanation, just a summons they couldn't afford to ignore. I knew they still had my address from previous family gatherings, and they certainly knew how critical this meeting would be for their future. For the next 2 days, my phone remained silent. No calls, no texts, no emails from any of them. I knew they were scrambling, checking legal filings, calling mutual connections, trying to understand how the quiet sister they'd dismissed had managed to become their potential executioner. Christmas morning arrived clear and cold. At exactly 8 a.m., my doorbell rang. Through my security camera, I watched Pete, Oliver, and Troy huddled on my doorstep like defendants awaiting sentencing. No wives, no children, no festive clothing, just 3 men in business casual, radiating anxiety. I took my time walking to the door, straightening my already straight blouse, adjusting my cuffs. When I finally opened it, I said nothing, just stepped aside to let them enter. Their expressions shifted from tense to confused as they took in my apartment. A small Christmas tree twinkled in the corner. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the air. The dining table was set for 4, with matching holiday placemats and napkins folded into perfect triangles. The same kind of warm family setting they'd decided I didn't deserve to be part of. Pete spoke first, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Look, Natalie, we didn't mean to. I raised my hand, cutting him off. You needed a bigger table, so I built one, and now you want a seat. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Oliver stared at the floor. We didn't know you were behind that company, Oliver mumbled. If we had, you'd have sent an invite? I asked, my voice level, or just use me to close the deal faster. Their silence was answer enough. I walked to the coffee table and picked up a single sheet of paper, the contract they desperately needed, offering $1.2 million in funding for Quinn Enterprises. I knew from my industry sources that they were barely making payroll, that Pete's expansion gambles had drained their reserves. I held out the paper. Pete looked stunned. Wait, are you giving us the deal? I nodded slowly. But there's a condition. They leaned forward in unison, suddenly attentive. From now on, I said, measuring each word, you work under me. You take orders. You report monthly. And if any of you ever treat someone like they're invisible again... I paused, letting the tension build. I won't cut your deal. I'll cut your company. The air in the room seemed to crystallize. No one moved. No one spoke. As they filed out, contracts signed, Pete turned back at the door. His expression was a mixture of resentment and something else. Perhaps respect. You really waited for the perfect moment, didn't you? I allowed myself a small smile. No, brother. I created it. 2 weeks later, the transformation of Quinn Enterprises was underway. The sign outside their office building had been replaced with the Horizon Capital logo. My management team had already implemented new systems, new reporting structures, and weekly performance reviews. I didn't visit in person. I didn't need to. Power doesn't require proximity. It flows through systems, through org charts, through the knowledge of who ultimately signs the checks. Pete's corner office, once a shrine to his own ego with its awards and golf photos, now housed a more modest desk. He still occupied it. I wasn't cruel enough to fire him, but his title had been downgraded. The new chief operating officer was Karen Bailey, a logistics expert who'd been repeatedly passed over for promotion under Pete's leadership despite her superior qualifications. The same woman who'd always remembered to ask about my analytics projects when no one else bothered. Oliver tried calling me 3 times one afternoon. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent a text message. All team communications go through the official channels now. Keep it professional. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The message was clear. They were employees now, not decision makers. The family that had excluded me from their table now worked for my company. Meanwhile, I was finalizing the next phase, merging Quinn Enterprises completely into Horizon Capital. In 30 days, the company name my father had built, the legacy Pete had assumed would be his birthright, would cease to exist. They would retain their jobs, but any pretense of independence would be gone. One evening, walking home from my actual office, a penthouse suite downtown that none of them had ever visited, I passed a restaurant and glimpsed them through the window. Pete, Oliver, Troy, and a few other Quinn employees. There was no laughter, no animated shop talk, just the subdued conversation of people who had lost something important. I didn't go in. I just kept walking. Some revenge doesn't need a confrontation. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is watching them live inside the empire they once said you'd never build. 30 days later, the final merger documents were signed. Quinn Enterprises officially became the supply chain division of Horizon Capital. The email addresses of my brother, my cousins, and everyone who had once mockingly asked if I was still doing that data stuff now ended with at horizoncapital.com. I scheduled an all-staff meeting, mandatory attendance. The conference room was packed when I arrived. Every employee from both companies present, wondering what changes the merger would bring. Pete sat in the front row, Oliver 2 seats away, both trying to maintain professional composures. The lights dimmed. A video began playing on the large screen, a corporate presentation detailing Quinn Enterprises' history, its strengths, and more pointedly, its failures. Years of missed opportunities, inefficient processes, declining market share disguised by creative accounting. Then a single sentence appeared on the screen. Sometimes the person you ignore is building the ground you're about to stand on. A murmur rippled through the room. I entered through a side door, walked calmly to the podium, and surveyed the audience. For a moment, I locked eyes with Pete, whose expression remained carefully neutral. You gave up on me when I had nothing, I said, my voice steady and clear. Now I own everything you built and everything you dreamed of building." I gestured to the screen where a final slide appeared. Effective immediately. All former partners are now employees. Titles removed, salaries adjusted. Welcome to the new structure. Oliver stood up, his face flushed. "You can't do this." I didn't even look at him. "Check your contract." He sank back into his seat. Pete said nothing, just stared at his hands. As I walked toward the exit, someone from the back called out, "Why didn't you just shut it all down?" I paused at the door and turned slightly. Because shutting it down would have ended it. Owning it? That makes them live with it every single day. I left not just the room, but the entire narrative they had created about me. The quiet sister, the data girl, the afterthought. That story was over. In its place stood a new reality. One where I wasn't just an outsider anymore. I was the author of their future. The final word in the story they thought they were writing without me. And the first chapter of my own empire had just begun. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.